Hi there and welcome. My name is Jonathan Deloy and I'm a Senior Managed Services Consultant at Adatus. Over the next few months, I'm going to be delivering a series of blogs and vlogs around Azure Bicep. If you've never heard of Azure Bicep before, or you have, but you don't really know how to get started with it, then this series of vlogs is for you. My objective over the course is to show you how you can deploy a simple vanilla Bicep template into your Azure Resource Group, all the way to automating your deployments through Azure DevOps CI/CD pipelines. My objective in this particular blog is to show you how you can deploy a simple storage account into your Azure Resource Group. Before we actually get started into how to deploy that template, I just want to talk a little bit about infrastructure as code and how Azure Bicep really fits into all of this, just because this will provide you a little bit of a background and a foundation to what's to come. So if you've never heard of the term infrastructure as code before, then really it is what it says on the tin. It's provisioning and it's defining your infrastructure in the form of code. You might ask yourself, well, why do I need to code my infrastructure? Why can't I just create it through the portal? And by all means, you can go and create your infrastructure manually through the portal, but then that will only bring you so far, especially when working in enterprise environments. Some of the benefits, just to name a few of why you should define your infrastructure in the form of code, is that it actually allows you to automate your deployments. If you think about if you have your infrastructure scripted out in the form of code, you could rerun that code, you could move that to other environments. It really creates a level of automation that deploying through the portal doesn't give you. It also allows you to have some sort of element of versioning. So let's say you actually want to change your infrastructure. Having that previous state of code that you know that works allows you to revert back to a previous working state that again applying changes through the portal doesn't give you. So now that we've discussed very briefly what infrastructure as code is and why we might want to use that, where does Azure Bicep fit into all of this? Well, Azure Bicep is a form of infrastructure as code. So there are many infrastructure as code languages out there: Terraform, ARM templates, Pulumi, just to name a few. Azure Bicep is an infrastructure as code language that has been developed solely by Microsoft and is solely used for deploying to Azure. So it is not used to deploy to any other cloud platforms except Azure. Again, you might be asking, well, ARM templates do all of this, and correct, ARM templates are solely for Azure, and you can write your infrastructure as code in ARM templates, but ARM templates again only bring you so far. So I think Microsoft have realized that some of the infrastructure as code languages out there were able to provide a level of flexibility and modularity which ARM templates didn't really provide as well. So Azure Bicep has really sort of taken the benefits of those other infrastructure as code languages and actually provided a much nicer authoring experience when writing your infrastructure as code. I will cover the benefits of Azure Biceps in vlogs to come, but really my purpose is to show you how you can deploy a simple storage account to your Azure Resource Group. I just wanted to say I've actually recently released a blog on how to actually get your local machine all ready and configured to deploy Azure Bicep templates. If you haven't read that blog, then I really highly recommend that you do, as it provides all the foundations and the prerequisites ready to actually deploy your Azure Bicep templates. Okay, let's get started with deploying our first Azure Bicep template. If you'd read my previous blog, you'd know that Visual Studio Code is the platform on which we are going to author our Azure Bicep template. So let's just start with what we have here. Let's have a look. So I've got a folder here called Bicep Dev, and this is really just a directory, a folder within my C drive that I'm going to use to store my Bicep templates. I can just prove this by if I reveal in File Explorer. We can see this is just a normal folder directory in which we're going to hold our Bicep templates. I have this deploy.ps1 file here. I will talk a little bit about that later, but I don't want to focus in on that too much right now. So within my Bicep Dev folder, I just want to create a new folder, and I can do that by clicking here. And I'm going to call this storage account. And all that would have done is just create a new folder here we can see called storage account. And within this folder, I want to create a file here called storage account.bicep. And notice how the extension here image has changed to an Azure Bicep icon. If I just remove that P, you can see that it's not there. But when I complete that extension name, you can see that the Azure Bicep icon is there. This really just validates for us that our machine environment has been configured correctly and is all ready to go ahead and set up our Azure Bicep templates. So fortunately, Microsoft have a GitHub repository page, which they have Azure Bicep templates for almost any resource that you would need to deploy into your Azure environment. I will post a link to the GitHub repository in the description below, but I'm just going to navigate to it now on my browser here. And here we have an Azure Bicep template file here to deploy a storage account. So if I click this icon here, I can copy the raw contents, and that is copied successfully. And I can paste this into my template file. So this might be a bit daunting to begin with and look like a lot of code, but I just want to break it down and really discuss each section bit by bit. So within Azure Bicep templates, we have this concept of parameters. And parameters really allow you to be much more dynamic in setting values for properties of your resources and allow you to actually reuse your templates in a much more flexible manner. I will cover the benefits of parameters in vlogs to come, but I just sort of want to talk about how they're used in this particular template. So if we talk about lines 1 to 12, and I just want to sort of start with line 12, because here is actually where we're talking about the first parameter that's declared, and that is the storage account type. So within Azure storage account, you can have different storage account types. In this particular instance, we have defined standard LRS, but you could have ZRS, GRS, and these are sort of referring to the different redundancy options you can have configured for your storage account. I don't want to sort of go into that too much, but that is essentially what they are. So on line 1 here, we're actually sort of saying we're given a description for that parameter, and that is really just for anyone who might be reading this template can actually just understand what those parameters are used for. So they're there just to give an understanding of what that parameter is used for. So here we're saying that this is the storage account type, so that if someone looks at that parameter and goes, well, what does that mean? You can provide a detailed description there. And then we've got this function here called allowed. And what we're doing here is we're actually saying that as part of this parameter, you're only allowed to use certain values. So as we can see here, we have defined standard underscore LRS, and that is fine because that is defined as an allowed value here within our allowed function. If I was to add another S onto the end of that, you can actually see that the parameter is now sort of coming up with an error here. And that is because that this value doesn't actually fit within the allowed values that we have defined. So that's our first parameter described. We've got another parameter here called resource group, called location. And here we've given it a description, so we're sending a location for all resources. And when we talk about location, we're sort of defining where, which data center do we want our storage account to be deployed to. So there are all different regions that you could. So you've got UK South, you've got West Europe, and so forth. But as part of this deployment, we're actually saying, well, have a look where the resource group is located and deploy my storage account in the same location. And that is what we're doing here. Then our next parameter here is actual storage account name. So when we deploy our storage account, we need to give it a name. And here we're sort of dynamically inferring a unique name here for our storage account. We will change this, but that is essentially what we are doing here. And again, we've given a description and we're just saying, look, this is the name of the storage account. So that's our parameters described and what they do. Then let's talk about this actual block of code here from lines 20 to 28. So here is actually where we're declaring our resource. So we're declaring our resource SA. So if we need to reference this particular resource through another resource, we can reference it through there. And we're also targeting the API that we want to connect to when deploying this storage account. And then, so as described, we need to give our storage account a name. So we're inferring a name here. So as you can see, we're actually inferring the parameter storage account name here. So if I was to actually put another S on here, this is going to squiggly line because it's going to say the storage account names doesn't exist in this current context because we don't have a parameter called storage account names. We have storage account name. Same for the location. So our storage account needs a location. And again, we are inferring the parameter value for our location. Again, the same with the SKU. Comes down to the storage account type, and we have a parameter for our storage account type, and that's where we're inferring our storage account type. And again, the kind here, so we've actually hard coded that as storage v2. Again, we could parameterize it, but if the value isn't going to change, then we can just hard code that. That's not a problem. We do have a property section here as well. So if you want to add extra functionality to your storage account or configure even more, you have that ability to do that. And then we have outputs. So if we actually want to output certain properties of the storage account, we can do as well. Again, I don't want to talk too much, but in this instance, we're going to output the name so that when we deploy, the name of the storage account is returned back to us, as well as the ID will be returned to us as well. So that is our template described, and you might be thinking, okay, that's great. How do I go and deploy this? So just to show you my Azure environment, I have a resource group here called example. It's empty, there's nothing in there. Hopefully by the end of this vlog, we should have a storage account defined by our bicep template deployed into this resource group. So flicking back over to our template, I do just want to sort of adapt this template a little bit. I don't actually want to generate a unique string for it. I want a specific name. So my name is Jonathan, so I'm going to give this J the lawyer, STR 01. Hopefully that name hasn't been used before. Otherwise the deployment will fail. So let's just take a look at that. That all looks good. So notice that this icon here as well, we've got that little circle there, which just shows that this document is unsaved. You need to make sure that your bicep template is saved. Otherwise, when you come to deploy, it will not deploy with the latest configuration changes. So I'm just going to save that. And now that our bicep template is saved. So now that we've got our template and we want to go and deploy that, we need to use the Azure CLI to go ahead and execute commands to deploy the template. So the first command I'm going to run is AZ login. And what this is actually going to do, this is going to authenticate us into our Azure environment. So it now says you have logged into Microsoft Azure. You can close this window, which is what I'm going to do. And now that this window is closed, I can see that we have now successfully logged in to the Azure environment. Now that we've successfully logged in, I want to go ahead and deploy the storage account itself. So how do I do that? Again, I will post the command into the description below, but we're going to use this this command called AZ deployment group create. And as part of this deployment, we need to pass two arguments. So we need to specify the resource group that we want to deploy to, So if we navigate over to here, we can see that my resource group is called example. So I'm just going to paste in here. I'm just going to put that in quotes, example. Then we need to provide the path to our template file, and this is just the path from where it stores locally on your machine. So if we reveal this in File Explorer, I can see I've got storage account.bicep, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy that whole path here. Again, I'm just going to put this in quotes, make sure that's saved. That is the path then to the template itself. Now, if I go ahead and execute this, hopefully this will deploy the storage account into my resource group. Just need to give that a minute to deploy. You can now see that the execution is running. And this has shown that it has been successful. Provisioning state succeeded. If we refresh our resource group, this might just take a minute. Just refresh the browser. We can now see we have our storage account. This just demonstrates how easy and how quickly you can get and started in writing your Azure BICEP templates to deploy your infrastructure. One thing I just want to highlight is that if you've ever worked with ARM templates before, you might already start seeing the benefits in Azure BICEP, even just from this blog. Simply because within Visual Studio Code, if I do a Control-Shift-P, I'll get an option to do a bicep build. And what this does is this actually generates me the ARM template for this bicep template. And if I click on, before I click on the ARM template, we can see that our Azure bicep template is 31 lines of code. Now, if we compare this to the ARM template, we can already see that we're stretching at 67 lines of code. So we can see how Azure Bicep actually removes a lot of the noise and actually simplifies, creating that much more nicer authoring experience using a simpler syntax to deploy essentially the same resource. I really hope you found this video useful. As always, if you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. I will provide in all content and materials such as the links and commands in the description below so that you have these all at hand. Thanks again for watching, and please stay tuned for the next vlog where I'll show you even more functionality that you can achieve through Azure Bicep. Thanks again.